Welcome to this delayed episode looking at my 6mm World War II collection, focusing primarily on the Eastern Front in its current form. I know I said I'd put this up some time ago, but other things got in the way, and more recently I got distracted by my Napoleonics. But here we are anyway, enough preamble. This is the Soviet side, my Eastern Front collection, focusing us around the 1943-ish time period, so sort of mid-war in inverted commas, and represents all the Russian armour that I've painted to date, all of which I think was painted middle of last year, and have been sort of sat awaiting a further attention ever since. They are all GHQ miniatures, so 1 to 285. They were all from Magister Militum actually in the UK, although that company's now not going to be selling the range anymore, so I'll have to find somewhere else if I want any more of these, but not to matter because I've got quite a few to be getting on with as it is. I've arranged them roughly speaking so we can have a quick look at them in their different forms. So at the front here you've got two companies or battalions, depending on the scale you're looking at, of T-34s. They're a mixture of marks, so I think I've got mostly 1942 on this side, and then 1942 on this side again, with a few 1943 in there. You can tell because of the hexagonal turrets and some of the other furniture that's been modelled on the miniature when it's been sculpted. And then the command tank, whether they're at company or battalion level, they've been put on a little circular base to just mark them out from the others. I have the intention of finishing sort of turret markings and so on. I'm not going to be using decals necessarily. I've started to hand paint numbers on some of them back when I was working on these. They look quite dark perhaps in this light. They're not actually that or as dark in real life. They're probably maybe a little bit too dark. Generally speaking, the advice around miniature at this scale is probably to paint them slightly lighter than you might otherwise do, and I haven't really done that here. So there is a bit more detail and so on these miniatures than perhaps might be evident at first glance. Hopefully some of that comes out despite the sort of light conditions as well. It's quite hard to get darker miniatures at this scale to show up in the way that I can see them with the sort of naked eye in real life. But that's the bulk of the T-34s at the front there. There are some more just behind them here, so there's a few spares that I had left over from the packs that I've painted anyway, that can be added or mixed in as needed and used for different bits and pieces. And behind them is the mixture sort of different types of tanks that could be added. You'll notice that most of this collection can be divided by 5s because that's the number of vehicles or tanks or whatever you get in each blister pack from GHQ. So I've ended up with 10 T-70s here. If I've ended up with 12, which suggests to me that I might have some more elsewhere, unless that particular pack has a greater or fewer number in, because some of them do. 5 is generally the default, but if they're smaller there might be more of them. And I think sometimes if they're larger there can be more of them as well, but I don't know that's strictly true because I've got 5 KV1s here and 5 Tigers. Anyway, I'm rambling on about that. But yeah, so you've got maybe a company or a battalion, depending again on the scales, worth of T-70s here, including one that's been popped on a little circular command base if need be. 5 Su-122s at the back. I couldn't tell you why, but for some reason, I don't know, the look and nature of that particular type of medium, if you like, assault gun is my favourite of the Soviet assault guns from that time period. I know people are big fans of the 152 as well. I do think I do have some Su-76s, I just haven't painted them yet, and they're the initial open-top versions, not the Su-76M, and then some KV-1s at the back. For a bit of more lumbering heavy armoured support, although obviously they're becoming a little bit obsolete by this stage in the face of mass production of T-34s with the same gun, although they will be improved later on to slightly different versions. But yeah, that is it. It's fairly straightforward really, and because they're all one uniform colour, I've had to paint them. They're not necessarily as visually interesting as their sort of German equivalents, but they were fairly straightforward to complete. As you can see, they've been based in the same style as the German vehicles on the other side. There we go, just a quick pan around some of them. And you'll see that the base sizes are slightly different, so for my purposes, all the medium to light tanks are on this size of base, and then all the heavier tanks are on that size of base. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what they are actually, although I do have a grid over there that I could measure them on. So let's quickly look. So that is a 35mm square base that those are on, which makes me think that the smaller tanks are on 30mm bases, which they are. So yeah, it's 30mm for squares for the medium to light tanks. Anyway, I appreciate the camera work probably went off chart a bit there. But yeah, so that is all of the Russian armour at this stage, my sort of 1943-ish era project. I have finished quite a lot of different infantry and guns as well, which I'll do in the next video, much as I did for the German equivalents. And that includes rifle troops, SMG troops, support weapons, anti-tank guns, things of that nature, and various infantry command bases and so on. But yeah, for now, that is everything in my 1943 Soviet World War II sort of collection. I think I do maybe have some T-35s there for very late, sort of 43, early 44, when the first ones might come online. But apart from that, they're fairly similar as well. There's quite an exotic and diverse range of German armour, as most people would probably be aware. That's not to say there isn't some diversity in different types of Russian armour and tanks and variety and things they started to produce as time went on, but they were much more standardised than the Germans. And I do, like the fact there's that esoteric mix in the German platoons of certain panzer divisions at this time, with the mixture of Panzer IIIs, Panzer IV, long barrel, short barrel, as they try and make that transition, but don't necessarily have quite the manufacturing, whereas here we've got nice, easy, standardised blocks of T-34s just rolling towards you. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed having a quick look at these, and hopefully the next World War II video in this series, but I won't promise when it is, will be the Russian infantry and sort of guns and other bits and pieces. And at some point, I'm going to get these on the table. My intention, as I might have mentioned in a previous video, is to do just armour to begin with and use GMT's Panzer rules, which I appreciate for a board game that I've converted-ish for use on the tabletop. And we'll see how those go.